Buried beneath the snow-draped pines of western Colorado, where icy wind howls through red canyons and the earth lies frozen in silence, a young officer stumbled upon something he was never trained to handle. An old German shepherd, half buried in snow, tied to a tree, and left to die. His back legs were limp, his eyes still burning with something unspoken, as if they had once seen war and never forgot. Before we begin, do you have a dog of your own? Drop your answer in the comments. I'd love to know who's watching alongside their furry best friend. And if you believe no hero, human or animal, should ever be forgotten, hit that subscribe button. What you're about to hear is not just a rescue, it's a redemption. The winter wind swept through Red Rock Canyon like a whisper from the past cold, biting, and laced with flurries. Towering red cliffs wore frosty crowns, casting long shadows across the snow-laced trails of western Colorado, where twisted junipers stood like stubborn sentinels dusted in white. The sky was a pale silver dome, and snowflakes drifted lazily from low-hanging clouds, softening the harshness of the canyon walls. Morning light filtered through the snowfall, revealing more than just rock and silence. Officer Tyler Brooks adjusted the collar of his navy blue patrol jacket as he stepped out of his cruiser and into the chill. At 26, he was the youngest in the Glenwood Springs Sheriff's Unit. A recent transfer from Denver after the incident, the one that left his partner dead and his spirit fractured. Tyler stood 6 feet tall, lean but tense like a coiled spring. His clean-shaven face was angular, with eyes too old for his age, pale green and often distant. He walked with the straight-backed posture of someone still trying to prove something to himself, mostly. The locals hadn't yet warmed up to him. He was quiet, kept to himself, and seemed like he was always listening for something they couldn't hear. The call had been routine, a report from hikers about strange barking heard near an old service trail that hadn't been used in years. Tyler didn't expect anything serious. Maybe a stray coyote or someone's dumped mutt. Still, he followed the trail, his boots crunching over fresh snow, one hand hovering near his holster out of habit. 15 minutes in, the trail narrowed between two boulders. That's when he heard it. Not a bark, but a sound deeper, hoarser. A broken whine, like rusted hinges pushed too far. Tyler stepped through the gap and stopped cold. There, at the base of a dying pine tree, was a dog. A German shepherd, old, starved, the kind of thin that made his ribs look like prison bars across his sides. His back legs dragged uselessly beneath him. The fur on his hips was matted with dirt and grime, and a thick rope had been tied roughly around his neck, knotted to the tree trunk. One ear drooped. The other twitched faintly at Tyler's presence. Tyler lowered himself slowly, knees sinking into the snow. "Hey, buddy," he said gently, voice cracking despite himself. "What the hell happened to you?" The dog didn't growl, didn't lift his head, just blinked once, slow and heavy, like he wasn't sure he was still alive. Tyler reached forward cautiously and noticed the dog's tag, a bent, nearly rusted piece of metal barely hanging onto the collar. There were scratches, dents, but faintly visible. The name Sergeant Rex could be made out. And beneath that, a barely legible line, K9 Unit, retired, 2017. Tyler's breath caught. This wasn't just some stray. This was a warhorse left behind. The sight hit him like a sucker punch. Rex's body trembled in the cold, but it was his eyes that undid Tyler dark and glassy, filled with something that wasn't pain but memory. Like he'd seen things no dog should have seen, things that still echoed in his bones. Tyler glanced around. No footprints, no tire marks. Whoever had left Rex here hadn't come in through normal paths. That meant intention. The snow began to fall more heavily. Tyler pulled off his jacket and draped it over Rex's back. "I got you," he whispered, not knowing who he was saying it for, Rex or himself. He pulled out a utility knife, cut the rope from the tree, and gently wrapped his arms under Rex's belly. The dog whined, but didn't resist. Tyler carried him carefully, step by slow step, back toward the cruiser. Each footfall stirred memories Tyler had been trying to bury. Memories of that warehouse in Denver, the gunfire, the scream, his partner, Mason, bleeding out beside him while Tyler called for backup that never came. It had been 6 months, and the department thought Tyler needed a change of scenery. So now, here he was, in the canyons with a crippled dog in his arms, wondering if either of them was worth saving. He reached the vehicle and opened the rear hatch. Gently, he laid Rex down on an emergency blanket and tucked the jacket around him. The dog's breathing was shallow but steady. Tyler climbed into the driver's seat and stared out the windshield for a moment before starting the engine. "You were someone once," he said under his breath. "Maybe we both were." The drive back to town was slow. Tyler called ahead to the sheriff's office and asked for veterinary support. They didn't ask questions. Tyler wasn't the type to joke. As the car bumped along the snow-covered road, Rex shifted slightly, and for the first time since Tyler had found him, he let out a sound. Not a growl, not a whimper, just a quiet, gravelly noise that sounded like effort, like something trying to return from the dark. And Tyler, still staring ahead, nodded once as if he understood. They arrived in Glenwood Springs just as the snow thickened around them, soft as breath, quiet as forgiveness. The snow outside had thickened to a soft curtain as Officer Tyler Brooks pulled into the lot behind the Glenwood Springs Sheriff's Department. A gray, quiet morning hung over the small mountain town, and most people hadn't yet left their homes. The world looked peaceful, blanketed in white, but the silence in Tyler's mind was anything but. He opened the back of his cruiser. The old German Shepherd was still lying motionless, wrapped in his jacket, 2 back legs stiff and twisted, as if frozen in time. Tyler gently lifted him again, his breath fogging in the cold air as he moved inside. The front desk was quiet. Only Deputy Sarah Klein was in early. She sat behind her terminal, sipping black coffee from a dented sheriff's mug and reviewing incident reports on a dusty monitor. Sarah was in her mid-30s, lean and muscular, with sun-lined skin and piercing gray eyes. Her uniform, always crisp, matched her temperament. Steady, focused, and always a little guarded. Years in a male-dominated force had taught her not to flinch or explain herself. When she saw Tyler carrying the dog, her brows lifted slightly. "That the one from the canyon?" Tyler nodded, setting the dog down carefully on a wool blanket laid over the tile floor near the heater. "Found him tied to a tree, barely breathing. I think he's paralyzed in the back legs. Probably been out there for days." Sarah stood, her boots clicking softly on the linoleum. She walked over, crouched near the dog, and ran her hand gently over his matted fur without touching the sore spots. "Old boy," she murmured. "Still fighting, huh?" Tyler pulled something from under the dog's collar. A small, worn silver tag, its edges dented and scuffed. He squinted at the faded letters. "Sergeant Rex," he read aloud. "K9 Unit, retired 2017. Sarah leaned closer, her interest sharpening. "That's an official rank, military or police?" Tyler gave a slow nod. "Can you run it? K9 registry start with state level, then federal?" "On it." Sarah moved quickly to her desk and began typing, her fingers tapping keys with the speed of long-practiced precision. Tyler stood nearby, arms folded across his chest as he kept an eye on Rex. The dog's eyes were cracked open, dark brown and glassy, watching the room but not reacting. A few minutes passed. Sarah looked up from the screen. "Got him. Name?" Rex, German Shepherd. Served in the Tactical K-9 Unit, Denver PD. Retired after sustaining injury in active-duty hostage rescue operation. His handler was Sergeant Brian Clay. Tyler frowned. Clay, I think I heard about him. What happened to him? Sarah scanned the screen again. Deceased. Died of cancer in 2019. No surviving family listed. No record of where Rex went afterward. So someone dumped him, Tyler muttered, more to himself than her. Sarah's voice dropped. It happens more than people think. He kneeled down beside the dog, slowly. He's a veteran, an actual decorated service dog, left to die out there. Rex didn't move, but his gaze was locked on Tyler now, not fearful, just observant, tired, like someone who had seen the world and found little left worth expecting from it. You gonna take him in? Sarah asked, watching. Tyler nodded without hesitation. Yeah, he's mine now. Sarah tilted her head, thoughtful. You sure about that? He served. He deserves better than a floor and a cold blanket. She gave a small smile, rare, but real. I'll file the paperwork. He's not property anymore, he's family. Tyler didn't respond. His hand was resting gently on the dog's bony shoulder, feeling the subtle rise and fall of his breath. The silver tag sat beside them on the floor, glinting in the morning light. The office stayed quiet after that. Outside, the snow kept falling, soft and slow. Rex's body barely moved, but his eyes, for the first time since Tyler found him, blinked slowly and deliberately. And in that look, Tyler felt something shift. Not just in the dog, but in himself. He didn't know yet what it meant, only that something old had been stirred awake, and he wasn't going to let it slip away. By midday, the snow had slowed to a thin flurry, and the roads out of Glenwood Springs shimmered with slush and tire grooves. Tyler Brooks guided his old forest green pickup truck up the winding road toward the western edge of White River National Forest. Behind the cab, in the truck bed carefully padded with old blankets and a tarp, lay Rex wrapped in layers of warmth. His eyes closed, but twitching occasionally beneath the lids. The cabin came into view after a sharp bend in the road. A modest one-story structure with a stone chimney and weather-worn wooden siding. It sat tucked among pines like it had grown there with the trees. Built decades ago by Tyler's grandfather, it had served as a family getaway before becoming a kind of refuge place no one else had touched since Tyler's parents passed. Now, it was just Tyler's. Empty, quiet, familiar in all the ways the city no longer was. He parked near the porch, turned off the engine, and stepped out into the cold air. As he opened the back, Rex opened his eyes, not fully just enough to show he was still tracking the world, still in it. I promised you something better than a holding cell, Tyler said quietly. This is all I've got, but it's yours now, too. Inside the cabin, the air was dry and smelled faintly of pine and smoke. Tyler lit a fire in the stone hearth, then gently carried Rex in, settling him onto a thick comforter near the warmth. The old dog's body was slow to relax, but he made no protest. Tyler watched him for a long moment before standing, rubbing his hands together and walking to the kitchen. The cabin had no modern luxuries, no TV, no internet. But it had peace, and for the first time in months that felt like enough. That evening, Tyler found an old spiral-bound notebook in a drawer. He flipped through a few pages, his grandfather's messy handwriting, notations about trail markers, fishing spots, and weather patterns before he turned to a fresh page and wrote, Day 1. Rex is alive. Breathing shallow but aware, eats little, eyes watchful. Flinched when I stoked the fire. Possible trauma response. Will monitor. The writing felt strange at first. Too clinical, Too detached, but it gave his thoughts structure, order, and that was something he hadn't had since Mason died in that warehouse back in Denver. The moment he closed Mason's eyes, something in him had fractured. This, caring for a dog that should have died, might be his way back. Night fell heavy and silent in the forest. The fire dimmed. Tyler lay on the couch nearby, blanket pulled to his chin, half awake and listening. Sometime past midnight, a sudden, sharp whimper sliced through the stillness. He sat up. Rex was twitching violently in his sleep legs, kicking weakly, breath rapid. His jaws clenched and then relaxed again. Another whine escaped him, this one lower, like something was chasing him in his dreams. Tyler knelt beside him. Hey, it's okay," he whispered. He didn't touch him. Something told him not to. Instead, he spoke softly, steadily, just like he used to with scared civilians during hostage drills. "You're not there anymore, Rex. You're here. You're safe." The dog's legs settled. His breathing slowed, but he didn't open his eyes. That night, Tyler wrote again. Day 1 continued. Night disturbance, severe, muscle twitching, whining, possible PTSD. Will avoid physical contact during episodes. Verbal reassurance seemed effective. The next morning brought a cold sunrise, a layer of new frost over the pine needles, and a strange sense of calm. Tyler cooked 2 eggs and placed a third into a bowl for Rex, who sniffed it with disinterest before finally taking a bite. A small thing, but a win. Tyler marked it down in his notebook. By the 3rd day, he started speaking to Rex aloud during the day, not just commands, but stories, memories, thoughts. He wasn't sure why, but it helped. Helped Rex. Helped him. "You know," he said one afternoon while sweeping the porch, "my dad used to bring me here when I was little. We'd camp out on the South Ridge, cook over a fire. He taught me how to track deer, how to listen to wind shifts. He always said the quiet places tell you more than people ever do." Rex, lying in the sun just a few feet away, didn't react, but his ears twitched. Later, Tyler opened his notebook again. Day 3. Rex ate full breakfast. Responded to voice with subtle ear movements. Slept longer. No night episodes. Healing is slow, but not still. He stopped writing, looked out the window, and added, "Maybe that's all I need, too. Something that's not still." That night, the fire crackled softly as Rex slept soundly for the first time since arriving. Tyler sat in the corner with the notebook on his knee, flipping back to the first entry. He didn't recognize the version of himself who wrote it. Cold, detached, a cop trying to document survival. Now, there was something more. Not quite hope, but something close. He looked over at Rex, the old warrior, curled on his side, still scarred, still broken, but alive. And maybe, just maybe, beginning to feel that he was home. It was a crisp Wednesday morning when Tyler finally decided to bring Rex into town. The old truck groaned down the winding road, pine trees rushing past in a blur of green and frost. The snow had melted some, but the ground remained slick and dark with winter's shadow. Rex lay quietly in the back seat, wrapped in the same flannel blanket he'd claimed as his own over the past week. His eyes were open now, more often than not, but they still carried that quiet wariness of someone who had seen too much and expected little. Tyler had made the appointment 2 days earlier, after Rex refused to stand even with support. Though the dog had grown stronger in spirit, his body betrayed him. The legs stayed still, the nerves unresponsive. Tyler needed answers. Not hope, just clarity. The Glenwood Veterinary Clinic stood on the edge of town, a low building of faded green wood surrounded by a short fence and 2 skeletal oak trees. The sign outside was worn but neatly painted. Dr. E. Mallory, DVM, Large and Small Animals Welcome. Tyler parked in front and gently lifted Rex from the truck, cradling the dog's body like a child. Inside, the warmth and scent of antiseptic and cedar met him instantly. The receptionist, a college-aged girl with short red hair and a scattering of freckles across her nose, looked up and smiled sympathetically. "You must be Officer Brooks." Tyler nodded. "This is Rex." "He's heavier than he looks," she joked softly, then stood. "Dr. Mallory's ready. Come on back." They entered a quiet examination room, and there stood Dr. Evelyn Mallory. She was a woman in her early 50s, tall and broad-shouldered, with weathered skin the color of sun-aged copper and silver-streaked hair pulled back in a long, tight braid. She wore olive-green scrubs under a faded Marine Corps hoodie, and her hands bore the kind of scars that came not from accidents, but from long years of hard, intentional work. Her eyes, steely gray and observant, locked onto Rex the moment Tyler entered. "Set him there," she said, gesturing to the padded table. Her voice was calm, clipped, but not cold. Tyler did as asked, carefully arranging Rex so his hind legs draped without tension. Rex gave a soft grunt, but didn't resist. Mallory leaned over the dog, placing her hands gently along the spine, pressing with methodical precision. She didn't speak for several minutes. She worked in silence, head tilted, fingers probing gently until finally, she straightened with a sigh and stepped back. "Tell me what you know," she said. Tyler recounted everything. The tree in the canyon, the rusted tag, the paralysis, the nightmares, the slow flickers of trust. He kept his voice level, but he didn't bother hiding the attachment he already felt. Mallory nodded through it all. When he finished, she looked down at Rex again. "This dog is a survivor, but what he's surviving from, it's old, chronic damage. His lower spine's been compressed, likely from shrapnel or blunt trauma years ago. It's not degenerative, but it's permanent. He'll never walk again without support." Tyler's jaw tensed. "So there's no surgery? Nothing we can do?" Mallory shook her head gently. "Not at his age, and not with injuries this old. The scar tissue alone would make it a gamble. Best case scenario, he gets a mobility cart. Worst case, you keep him comfortable and let him decide when he's had enough." Tyler looked down at Rex, who blinked slowly in return. "He's not giving up," he said. "Neither am I." Mallory studied him for a moment. Then, in a rare softening of tone, she added, "You know, I remember this dog." Tyler looked up. "You do?" She pulled a worn file from the drawer and set it beside the table. It was thin, but had one laminated photo clipped to the front. A younger Rex, eyes alert and bright, stood beside a tall, barrel-chested man in a Denver PD K-9 unit vest, Sergeant Brian Clay. "I was with the Army for 20 years, Mallory explained. Switched to working with K-9 units toward the end. After retirement, I contracted occasionally with Denver PD for trauma consults. Rex was a legend. Pulled 2 children from a bombed-out daycare after a standoff. Took a bullet in the flank during a hostage negotiation. Always came back. They used to call him the Wall because he never flinched." Tyler exhaled slowly, eyes on the photo. Why would anyone abandon him like that? Mallory's eyes darkened. "Because people forget, or they can't handle seeing what time does to warriors. Clay died. I imagine Rex was passed on to someone who wasn't ready for that kind of responsibility." Silence fell for a beat. Tyler reached down, placing a hand on Rex's shoulder. "He deserves better." "He's got you now," Mallory said, then added, "and that matters." She scribbled a quick prescription for anti-inflammatory meds and outlined a few exercises Tyler could try to keep Rex's muscles from atrophying further. "And when you're ready, I'll help you get him fitted for a cart. He'll need a custom one. He's longer than average, bigger boned." Tyler nodded. "I'll start on it this week." As he gathered Rex in his arms once more, Mallory opened the door. "One more thing," she said. "He won't recover because of science. He'll recover because someone finally reminded him he's not forgotten." Tyler paused, then gave a quiet nod of thanks. Outside, the snow had stopped. The clouds were beginning to break, soft beams of sun cutting through in streaks across the mountain skyline. On the way back to the cabin, Rex rested his chin against the door panel, eyes half closed. But when Tyler glanced over, he saw something flicker behind those eyes, not just awareness, but memory. As if somewhere in that worn and battered body, a piece of Sergeant Rex still stood tall. That night, Tyler opened his notebook and wrote, "Day 8, vet confirmed spinal trauma, permanent paralysis. No surgical hope." But she knew him. She remembered who he was. "Rex has a legacy. Now it's my job to carry it forward." He closed the notebook and looked over at Rex, already dozing by the fire. "You're not done yet," Tyler whispered. The first rays of morning sun filtered through the pine canopy, casting golden bars across the porch of the cabin. A gentle wind stirred the branches outside, making the wind chimes clink softly like distant church bells. Inside, Tyler Brooks knelt on the cabin floor, his hands streaked with grease and pine dust as he tightened the final bolt of the frame. In front of him sat a handmade four-wheeled cart crafted from aluminum tubing, nylon straps, and the stripped-down axles of an old lawnmower. It wasn't pretty. It looked more like something from a post-apocalyptic workshop than a professional veterinary device. But it was solid, sturdy, purposeful, just like the dog it was meant for. Rex lay nearby on the floor, his head resting on his paws, eyes half-lidded. He'd grown stronger in the last 2 weeks, at least in spirit. He watched Tyler's movements with quiet interest, though his ears barely twitched anymore when spoken to. The meds had helped ease his pain, and the daily massages kept his front legs and torso engaged, but the back still lifeless, still unreachable. Tyler wiped his hands on a rag and exhaled. "All right, partner," he said softly. "Let's see what you think of this." It took nearly 20 minutes to ease Rex into the harness. The straps were carefully padded with fleece, and Tyler had lined the chest plate with memory foam. He moved slow, speaking softly the whole time, narrating each motion like a surgeon explaining a procedure. Rex didn't resist, he never did, but his body remained heavy, resigned. Once secured, Tyler lifted the rear bar gently. The wheels rolled with a soft crunch on the wooden floor. Rex's front legs were stable, but he didn't move, just stood there, frozen. "You don't have to run," Tyler whispered. "Just try, one step." Nothing. Tyler stepped back, then a little farther, walking toward the door. "Okay," he said over his shoulder, his voice suddenly casual. "I'm heading outside for a bit. Back soon." He opened the cabin door with a creak and stepped out into the early cold. Then he waited, holding his breath. Behind him, a faint sound, a scrape. Then another. He turned. Rex had taken one step, then another. His movements were clumsy, more dragging than walking, but the wheels moved. The cart turned with him. His head lifted, not fully, but enough to reveal a look Tyler hadn't seen before. Curiosity, maybe even the beginning of pride. Tyler didn't say anything. He just watched as Rex shuffled across the cabin, inch by inch, until he stopped in the exact spot where Tyler had been standing moments ago. He looked up. Their eyes met. And in that moment, Something broke loose inside Tyler like pressure, cracking a pipe that had held too long. "You stubborn old soldier," he whispered, his throat tight. That evening, he wrote in his notebook, Day 12. Built first cart. Rex stood, moved 6 feet without prompting. No tail wag, but eyes brighter. Possible emotional response to absence. More testing needed. "Also," I cried, "didn't write that part." A week later, the story changed again. Tyler had stopped at the local hardware store in town to pick up heavier-duty bolts for a second prototype cart. There, he bumped into Danielle Ruiz, a tall, sprightly high school English teacher in her early 40s. She wore a beanie, carried a large canvas tote, and always smelled faintly of cinnamon. Danielle had a reputation in town for organizing local charity drives and always asked too many questions, but never the wrong ones. When she spotted Tyler and the cart sketches tucked under his arm, her eyes lit up. "What's that?" she asked, peering over his shoulder. He hesitated. "It's for my dog, Rex, old K9, can't walk. I'm building him a cart." Danielle's face softened with that instant sympathy unique to teachers and dog lovers. "Is that the same dog Sarah was talking about at the diner last week?" Tyler blinked. "Maybe." "Well," she said, already pulling her phone from her pocket, "our school's senior leadership group is looking for a service project. I think this just became it." By the end of the day, Danielle had created a GoFundMe page titled Wheels for a Warrior, complete with a photo of Rex in his makeshift cart. By week's end, they had raised enough to buy titanium wheels, padded supports, and a professional custom frame built by a company specializing in animal mobility gear. The first time Rex was strapped into the new cart, something changed. Not in the wheels or the frame, or the straps, but in Rex. He stood taller. His steps, still slow, had rhythm. His ears perked at forest sounds. He followed Tyler across the yard for 10 full minutes without pausing. It was no miracle. It was still hard. But it was movement. Purpose. Will. That night, as the fire cracked and the cabin hummed with quiet, Tyler knelt beside Rex and whispered, "You fought to stay alive. Let's figure out what you're fighting for." Rex rested his head against Tyler's knee, and for the first time, he exhaled, not in pain, but in peace. The summer heat had arrived early in the mountains, turning the pine needles brittle and the wind sharp with dryness. Days without rain had left the undergrowth in Pine Hollow crisp like parchment, waiting for a spark. The call came in just after noon. A forest fire had broken out near the lakeside cabins northeast of town. Tyler Brooks had just finished checking Rex's new support straps when his radio crackled to life. "Brooks, report to Station 3. Pine Hollow blaze. Missing child reported in the vicinity. Over." Tyler was already grabbing his gear. "Copy. On my way." Rex, now comfortable in his titanium-framed cart, perked his ears at the sound of the radio. He couldn't run like he once did, but that look-sharp, alert, focused return to his eyes like an old instinct woken up. "You're not staying behind," Tyler said, clipping the leash onto Rex's custom harness. "If there's one thing I've learned, it's never underestimate you." The fire's smoke was already visible as Tyler reached the staging zone, a thick plume rising above the pines, gray at the base, rust orange at the top. Ash floated in the air like falling feathers. Tyler parked near the volunteer fire unit, where Sheriff Deputy Granger was issuing instructions. Granger was a broad, clean-shaven man in his late 40s, known for his no-nonsense demeanor, and a voice that always sounded one pitch above irritation. Today, his face was red from both heat and stress. "We've got a missing child," Granger said, motioning Tyler closer. "Name's Ellie Monroe, 7 years old. She was camping with her family, got separated when the fire broke." We're sweeping the perimeter, but it's moving fast. Tyler nodded grimly. She's on foot? Last seen near cabin 16 by the lake. If she went uphill, she may be trapped. I want you to check the gulch to the west. It's steep, but the kid might have tried hiding in the rocks. Tyler looked down at Rex. You ready, old man? Rex didn't respond. He just stared ahead, ears forward, paws tense. The cart's wheels squeaked once, then fell silent as he began to move. The terrain into the gulch was rough, with loose rock and scorched branches crackling underfoot. The air grew heavier with smoke as Tyler moved deeper, the scent acrid and choking. His radio was mostly static now, too far from base. Then, without warning, Rex stopped. He stood rigid, nose twitching, head tilted slightly. Tyler paused, waiting. Rex pulled forward sharply, veering off the trail toward a dense patch of brush and low-lying cedar. The leash tugged hard, the wheels bouncing over uneven ground. "What is it?" Tyler called, coughing into his sleeve. Rex barked once, a short, deliberate bark, then another. That's when Tyler heard it. A faint sound, barely more than a whimper. "Help!" He ran toward it, crashing through the foliage, until he found a narrow split in the rocks, a natural fissure in the gulch wall, just wide enough to crawl through. Inside, curled against the stone, was a small girl in a red jacket, face streaked with soot, eyes wide with fear. "Ellie?" Tyler called. She nodded, silent. Tyler squeezed in, brushing his radio. "This is Officer Brooks. I've located the missing child. She's in a rock crevice about 2 clicks west of the lakeside trailhead, requesting med evac and containment. Over." Static. Then, "Copy that. Stay put. Team's en route." Tyler turned to Ellie. "You're safe now, sweetheart. We're getting you out of here." But the fire was moving fast. He could hear the crackle of approaching flames in the trees above. Rex barked again, standing guard at the entrance. The smoke was thick now, and Tyler pulled Ellie into his arms, covering her face with his jacket. As he stepped out, Rex pivoted, leading the way back slow, determined, his wheels crunching over fallen ash and debris. When the team arrived 15 minutes later, Tyler emerged from the gulch with Ellie in his arms, soot smeared across his cheeks. Rex followed closely behind, coat flecked with ash, eyes red from smoke, but still alert. Paramedics rushed forward to take Ellie, and Tyler collapsed beside Rex, one hand on the dog's shoulder, tears streaking his face through the grime. "You still had it in you," he whispered. "You saved her. You knew." Rex leaned slightly into him, and for the first time in weeks, wagged his tail just once. Later, at the station, Deputy Sarah Klein approached Tyler with a towel and a bottle of water. She looked over at Rex, then back at Tyler, her voice quiet. "He's more than a survivor." Tyler nodded. "He's a hero, always was." That night, back at the cabin, Tyler wrote in his notebook by firelight. Day 20, Pine Hollow Fire. Rex led us straight to the missing girl. No hesitation, no second guessing, just instinct, purpose. The fire's out, Ellie's safe, and I've never felt prouder. He closed the notebook, looked over at Rex curled up, soot still clinging to his fur, and said quietly, "You're not done being a warrior, not yet." The quiet after the fire felt surreal. In the days following the Pine Hollow rescue, Tyler and Rex returned to a more peaceful rhythm. Morning walks in the clearing, daily exercises with the cart, and long evenings by the fire. Rex seemed more alert now, his movements purposeful, his eyes steady. Tyler had taken to calling him Sarge some mornings, half teasing, half reverent. Rex didn't respond to the nickname, but sometimes he gave a low chuff that Tyler swore was amusement. The local paper ran a small article. Retired K-9 saves missing girl in forest blaze. Danielle Ruiz, the schoolteacher who'd helped organize the fundraiser, dropped off a printed copy at Tyler's cabin, laminated and clipped to a piece of reclaimed wood. "You should hang it up," she said, smiling. "Heroes deserve their walls." Then came the knock. It was mid-morning, birds chirping in the pines, when Tyler heard the sharp rapping at the cabin door. He opened it to find a man standing there, a tall, lean figure in a faded denim jacket and dusty boots. His face was long and narrow, with high cheekbones and a sun-leathered complexion. He had the look of someone who worked with his hands, but his eyes— Tyler knew those eyes. Cold, calculating. "Officer Brooks?" the man said, his voice dry as gravel. "Name's Martin Gibbs. I believe you've got something that belongs to me." Tyler didn't move. "What are you talking about?" "The dog, Rex," Martin said, gesturing toward the yard where Rex lay under the porch, ears twitching. "He was mine. I took him in after his handler died, got paperwork somewhere, been looking for him for weeks." Tyler narrowed his eyes. "You left him tied to a tree in Red Rock Canyon." Martin's face twitched just a flicker. Then it hardened. "I don't know what lies he's told you, but dogs don't talk. He wandered off, probably got himself stuck. I've got legal ownership. I'm here to take him back." Tyler stepped outside, closing the door behind him. "You can't take him. He's not property. He's a living, breathing soul. And you gave up that right when you left him for dead." Martin's tone shifted, no longer civil. "Listen, I spent money feeding that dog, training him, and now he's on the news, making headlines. He's still got value, maybe not for patrol, but therapy programs, emotional support work. I got offers. And now he's some charity poster child? I'm not walking away empty-handed." Tyler's jaw clenched. "You're not walking away with him, period." Martin stepped forward, face close. "Then I'll see you in court." 3 days later, Tyler sat in the county clerk's office, Rex curled beside him in his cart. Across the room, Martin sat with a sour expression, arms crossed. His lawyer, slim, nervous, mid-30s, flipped through a manila folder of supposed proof. Tyler had Sarah Klein at his side, straight-backed and calm, with her badge clipped prominently and a stack of documents neatly arranged. At the head of the table was Judge Henrietta Lowell, a short, silver-haired woman with sharp brown eyes and a reputation for cutting through nonsense like a chainsaw through ice. She looked over the file briefly, then adjusted her glasses. "Mr. Gibbs," she began, "you claim ownership of a retired K-9 named Rex, currently under the care of Officer Tyler Brooks. Your claim hinges on having taken custody after the death of Rex's former handler, Sergeant Brian Clay. Is that correct?" Martin nodded. "Yes, ma'am. I was given the dog after Clay passed. I have emails." "And what happened to the dog?" Martin shifted. "He ran off." Judge Lowell raised an eyebrow. "Ran off and ended up tied to a tree in the middle of a canyon." Tyler spoke calmly. "Your Honor, I recovered Rex personally from Red Rock Canyon. He was tied by the neck, immobile, suffering from advanced spinal trauma. He would have died without immediate care. Sarah passed the judge a copy of the veterinary assessment from Dr. Evelyn Mallory, along with photographs of Rex at the time of rescue. These injuries were not recent," Sarah said, "and not caused by natural terrain. The rope marks indicate intentional abandonment." Martin's lawyer tried to interrupt, but Judge Lowell held up a hand. "I've reviewed the photographs. I've also read Dr. Mallory's sworn statement regarding the dog's condition, history, and prior heroic service. Do you dispute that this dog was in your custody before disappearing, Mr. Gibbs?" Martin grunted. No, but he wasn't my responsibility anymore. I gave him to someone. Maybe they left him. Which means, the judge said, leaning forward, you relinquished ownership. You had no written transfer, no follow-up. You lost all legal standing the moment you walked away. Martin muttered something under his breath. Judge Lowell closed the file. The court rules in favor of Officer Tyler Brooks. Rex is no longer the property of Mr. Gibbs. He shall remain under Officer Brooks's guardianship as a retired service animal. This court is adjourned. Martin stood quickly, brushing past Tyler without a word. Outside, he disappeared into a silver pickup, tires kicking gravel. Tyler knelt beside Rex, brushing his coat. "You're free now," he said. "No one's coming to take you back." Rex looked up at him, blinked once, then leaned into Tyler's hand. That night, Tyler tacked Danielle's laminated newspaper clipping on the cabin wall, right above Rex's resting spot. The headline was barely legible in the firelight, but Tyler didn't need to read it. He knew the story by heart. Spring arrived early that year, melting the last of the snow from Glenwood Springs rooftops and breathing life back into the dusty sidewalks and slumbering hills. Daffodils bloomed in bursts of yellow near the courthouse lawn, and Main Street was strung with fluttering banners, red, white, and blue, faded from use but still full of spirit. It was the kind of morning that felt like a clean slate. The townspeople had gathered by the dozens, families with strollers, veterans in decorated jackets, teenagers waving paper flags. At the center of the square stood a modest platform built from borrowed lumber and goodwill, flanked by folding chairs and a single wooden podium. Beside it was a wide path, cleared for the procession. The parade was small. It always had been. Glenwood Springs didn't need grandeur to celebrate its own, but this year there was a new name on the program, one that no one had expected, but everyone now agreed belonged there. Rex. The old German shepherd sat upright in his custom wheelchair, the polished titanium frame gleaming under the sun. A red bandana was tied around his neck. His ears stood high. His coat, though still tinged with age, had regained its luster, and in his eyes was the steady, unshakable calm of a soldier who knew the battlefield and had chosen peace. Tyler Brooks walked beside him, wearing his cleanest uniform. He looked younger somehow, the lines around his eyes softer, his posture no longer stiff with guilt but settled with quiet pride. One hand rested gently on Rex's back as they moved along the route, wheels humming softly against the pavement. The crowd erupted as they passed. Children clapped. Elderly veterans rose from their seats. One man, wearing an old Marine cap, gave a crisp salute as Rex rolled by. Tyler nodded at him, eyes glistening just for a moment before he blinked it away. The mayor, Lori Jenkins, a woman in her late 50s with a sharp bob haircut and a fondness for local history, stood at the podium when the procession came to a halt. She was small, with a firm voice and the kind of authority earned through decades of PTA meetings, town hall negotiations, and knowing every shopkeeper by name. "This town," she began, "has always been built by the hands of quiet heroes, people who show up when the world goes quiet. Today, we honor one of those heroes, an officer who once ran toward danger without hesitation, and a companion who never stopped doing the same. Rex, you may be retired, but your heart never clocked out." Rex didn't move, but his tail flicked once, just enough to set the crowd clapping again. Later, as the sun began to dip behind the mountain ridge, Tyler loaded Rex gently into the truck bed, laying a folded wool blanket beneath him. He waved off congratulations from townsfolk politely, his social battery running on fumes. The praise was nice, but it wasn't the part that mattered. That came later. Back at the cabin, dusk settled like smoke across the treetops. The fire in the hearth crackled low, and a pot of stew simmered on the stovetop. Tyler stepped onto the porch with a glass of iced tea and a folded lawn chair, placing it beside Rex's cart. The dog rested quietly, eyes half closed, chin on his front paws. For a long time, they sat in silence, just the creak of the wood, the whisper of wind through pine needles, and the occasional call of an owl deep in the forest. Then Tyler leaned forward slightly, his voice barely above a whisper. "You saved that little girl. You saved this whole town's hope, Rex. But me, you saved me from something worse." Rex stirred. "I didn't know if I still had it in me," Tyler continued. "After Denver, after Mason, I thought I'd never feel anything but guilt again. Then you showed up, and all this, it mattered again." He reached out, resting his hand on Rex's neck. "You saved me from a wound no one could see. Thank you for not giving up." Rex let out a low, contented huff and turned his head just enough to nudge Tyler's wrist. That night, Tyler wrote one final note in his journal. Day 41. The parade was beautiful. Rex was celebrated finally for all he's done, for who he is. But today wasn't just about honoring the past. It was about choosing what comes next. And for once, I'm not afraid of that. We're not broken. We're just still healing. He closed the book and looked toward the sleeping dog. Tomorrow would come, as all days do. But for now, they had peace. And for the first time in a long while, that was enough. Sometimes, miracles don't come with lightning or trumpets. They arrive quietly, on 4 wheels and tired legs, in the form of a broken old dog who simply refuses to give up. Rex wasn't just a survivor. He was a reminder. A reminder that even when the world forgets us, when we feel discarded or unseen, God still sees. He sends his answers in ways we might never expect, a stranger's kindness, a second chance, or the eyes of a loyal friend who refuses to let us walk alone. In our daily lives, we rush past pain and miracles alike. But perhaps, like Tyler, we're being called to slow down, to listen, and to care for others, for ourselves, and for those silent battles being fought every day around us. The story of Rex teaches us that healing is real, that redemption is possible, and that the love we give, especially to the forgotten, becomes the love that saves us in return. If this story touched your heart, share it with someone who needs a little hope today. Comment below how this story made you feel, and if you believe that God still works through the small and the silent, type Amen in the comments to say you believe in second chances. Subscribe to our channel for more true stories that lift the spirit and remind us of the good still left in the world. May God bless you, protect your home, and guide your heart always.